I should have known the laughter would sting more than the will itself. The lawyer's office smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, the kind of place where lives get reduced to paper. Robert's death had already hollowed me out, but I wasn't prepared for the final insult waiting in those mahogany chairs. Dorothy Henderson, Mr. Blackwood read, his voice smooth and practiced, shall inherit the oil-painting titled Sunset over Lake Michigan, currently hanging in the master bedroom. I sat frozen, my hands clasped tight in my lap. An old painting. That was it. 46 years of marriage, and my name was attached to nothing more than a faded canvas we'd bought decades ago. Vanessa didn't even try to hide her reaction. My daughter-in-law clapped her manicured hands like a delighted child. Her laugh, sharp and shrill, cut across the room like glass. "Well," she said, turning to me with those icy blue eyes, "guess you were just a useless old wife after all." My cheeks burned, but I didn't flinch. I forced myself to meet her gaze, calm and steady. "How interesting," I said softly, though inside my chest felt like it was caving in. Mr. Blackwood cleared his throat and continued. "And to my beloved son, Michael Henderson, I leave Henderson Construction Company, including all assets, properties, and business interests valued at approximately $3.2 million. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He didn't defend me, didn't stop his wife's smirk from widening. He just sat there, as if silence excused betrayal. "Mom," he started hesitantly, but I raised a hand, stopping him. My voice was steady, though my heart screamed inside. "Don't, Michael. Just don't." The lawyer slid a small envelope toward me. "There are other provisions, but these are the major bequests. Inside, you'll find a key to a safe deposit box containing the painting and a few personal items your husband wanted you to have." I took the key without a word. Vanessa was already on her phone, whispering excitedly, probably spreading the news of their windfall. Michael gave me a look, guilt flickering in his eyes, but guilt doesn't rebuild dignity once it's been stripped away. As I left the office, my son called after me, "Mom, please wait." But I didn't turn around. I walked to my car with my head held high, every step heavy with betrayal. That night, I sat alone in my bedroom, staring at the envelope on the nightstand. The so-called inheritance waited for me at the bank, but I already knew Vanessa's laughter would echo longer than any words on paper. 2 days later, I finally collected the painting. It looked even uglier than I remembered. Thick brushstrokes of orange and pink, a clumsy sunset smeared across the canvas. Robert had always insisted it was by some local artist, but to me, it had never been more than wall clutter. Now it was my only legacy. I carried it inside, the frame heavier than expected, and set it against the bedroom wall. My chest tightened. This was Robert's final message to me? This pathetic scrap? Still, something in me couldn't throw it away. Maybe out of habit, maybe out of spite, I decided to hang it back where it had always been. I lifted it toward the hook on the wall, muttering under my breath, "Fine, Robert. If this is all you thought I deserved, then I'll live with it." But as I struggled with its weight, one corner slipped, striking the edge of the dresser. A dull thud echoed, followed by a faint rustling sound, like paper shifting inside the frame. I froze. Slowly, I set the painting face down on the bed. My fingers brushed the back and found a corner of the old brown paper torn loose, curling away from the wood. Beneath it, something was tucked inside. My heart pounded. Robert had guarded this painting for years, almost possessively. I'd always thought it was sentimentality, but maybe it was something else. I slid my nail beneath the paper and pulled it back carefully. Something thin pressed against my fingertips. I worked it loose, heart hammering in my chest. It wasn't just a painting. Hidden inside was a photograph, and when I turned it over, my blood ran cold. The photograph trembled in my hands. At first, my mind refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. A young woman, half-dressed, sprawled across crisp hotel sheets, laughing at something just out of frame. Her hair was mussed, her smile smug, like she owned the world. And I knew that face. Vanessa. My daughter-in-law. I pressed a hand to my chest, forcing air back into my lungs. She looked younger in the picture, maybe 5 or 6 years younger, but it was unmistakably her. The sharp cheekbones, the bright blonde hair, the way her mouth curled into a smirk as if mocking whoever had taken the photo. I whispered to the empty room, my voice hoarse. Robert, what did you know? My husband had kept this painting close for decades, guarded it, carried its ugliness from house to house. He'd even snapped at me once when I joked about throwing it out. Now I understood why. I sank onto the edge of the bed, staring at the photo. My throat burned with bile. Vanessa, smug, cruel Vanessa, had mocked me at the lawyer's office, called me a useless old wife. And yet here she was, caught in a compromising moment long before she married my son. But that wasn't the part that made my blood run colder. In the background, on the nightstand beside her, I saw a man's watch. An expensive one with a distinctive gold band. I knew that watch. I had seen it dozens of times. My pulse spiked. Just 3 days ago, I had noticed the exact same watch sitting in a small dish on Michael's desk at Henderson Construction. He had shrugged when I asked. Dad's old watch, he said. The band's been loose for years. Funny thing went missing a while back. Vanessa found it at some hotel after a wedding. Lucky she spotted it. Lucky. That was the word he used. Now my hands shook as I pressed the photograph flat. If this picture was real, then Vanessa hadn't just been at a hotel with Robert's watch. She had been photographed in bed there. With who? My late husband? Someone else? The betrayal twisted in my gut. I felt sick, thinking of Robert guarding this photo for years. Did he know? Did he carry this secret to his grave? I forced myself to study the details again. The bedding was fine Egyptian cotton. The furniture looked expensive, polished. The kind of suite you only find in upscale hotels downtown. This wasn't some blurry snapshot from a drunken night. The photo looked staged, deliberate, almost professional. And that made it worse. Someone wanted this moment preserved. I folded the photograph and slid it into my nightstand drawer, locking it with a tiny brass key Robert had always kept on his ring. My hands were still trembling. Vanessa's laughter echoed in my ears, cruel and dismissive. Guess you were just a useless old wife after all. Well, maybe useless wives can still uncover secrets. I stood, looking at the ugly painting lying face down on the bed. For the first time, I didn't see clumsy brushstrokes. I saw a vault, a coffin for the truth Robert couldn't bear to speak aloud. That night, sleep never came. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the photograph. Vanessa's smug face. The gold watch glinting on the nightstand. My son's silence at the will reading. By morning, my decision was made. I couldn't ignore this. I needed answers, and I needed them now. At 10 o'clock, I walked into Henderson Construction. Michael was in a meeting, but I waited in the lobby, clutching a paper cup of burnt coffee as employees glanced at me with awkward politeness. I was no longer the boss's wife, just the widow with nothing but a painting. When Michael finally appeared, his tie loosened, his eyes tired. He looked surprised. Mom, this is a surprise. Everything okay? I smiled tightly. Just wanted to see how you're settling into your father's office. He led me inside proudly, showing me the mahogany desk, the family photos, the framed certificates. But my eyes weren't on the walls. They were on the dish beside his computer. The watch. The same one from the photograph. That's a beautiful watch, I said casually, though my voice betrayed a tremor. New. Michael glanced over. No, Dad's old one. Like I said, Vanessa found it years ago at some hotel. Lucky break. Lucky. Again that word. I forced a smile, but inside, every piece of me was screaming. Robert's watch had been in that hotel room. With Vanessa. And my son had no idea. As I left his office, Michael walked me to the door, his hand brushing mine. "Mom, are you sure you're okay?" I nodded, swallowing the storm in my chest. "I'm fine," I whispered. But the truth was burning inside me. Because if the watch was real, then the photograph wasn't just scandal, it was a map. And I was going to follow it. The moment I stepped into the sunlight, I knew where I had to go next. Downtown. To the hotels. To the place where my husband's secrets and Vanessa's sins had been hiding all along. And I would find them. I told myself I was just scouting an anniversary venue. That life fit better than the truth. I was a widow walking into a battlefield with a calm smile and a breaking heart. The Grand View Hotel rose out of Michigan Avenue like money made of stone. Glass doors, polished brass, orchids that probably had their own staff. I smoothed my coat and stepped inside. "Welcome in," the concierge said brightly. "How may we help you today?" "I'm considering a small anniversary celebration," I said, keeping my voice light. "Just looking at options." Within minutes, a sales manager had me in a suite with a view that made the city look obedient. Italian marble in the bathroom, a sofa the color of quiet money, and on the bed, crisp, bright sheets so fine they whispered when I brushed my hand across them. I kept my smile warm, but my stomach clenched. The furniture lines, the headboard, the pale lamp with its brass pull chain. It all matched the photograph in my nightstand. "That's lovely," I told the manager. "Do your suites all have this layout?" "Most on this floor do," she said, cheerful as a catalog. "And the linens are Egyptian cotton." Egyptian cotton. My fingers tingled. I thanked her, took a brochure I didn't want, and drifted toward the bar. The bartender looked up, then broke into a soft grin. "Mrs. Henderson," he said, wiping his hands on a towel. "Haven't seen you in a while. How's Mr. Robert doing?" For a moment, my voice failed me. "He passed last month," I said quietly. His face fell. "I'm so sorry. He was a good man. Always the same order, whiskey neat." He hesitated, eyes searching mine. "He came by often these last few years." "By himself?" I asked, arranging my features into something neutral. The bartender, his name tag said Tony, shifted his weight. "Usually with that pretty young blonde. Your daughter-in-law, right? Vanessa?" My hand tightened around the edge of the bar. "You're certain?" I asked, keeping my voice even. Tony nodded. "Hard to forget. Thursdays, mostly. He'd sit right there." He tapped the far corner. "She liked those martinis with 2 olives. He'd tease her for eating the garnish." I let out a small breath that wasn't a laugh. "Yes," I said. "That sounds like him." I ordered a glass of house, white I didn't intend to drink, and stared at its surface. Thursdays. The linens. The headboard. The photograph. The watch. The story began to braid itself into a rope strong enough to pull down a house. "Did they ever meet with anyone else?" I asked softly. Tony thought. Sometimes he'd step away to take a call. Once or twice I saw a guy in a dark suit talk to him in the lobby. Tall, expensive hair. The kind of man who always looks like he's late for something. "Did you catch a name?" He shook his head. "Sorry." "It's all right," I said. "You've been very kind." I paid for the wine, left it untouched, and moved toward the lobby. The marble floor kept my heels honest. I was halfway to the doors when a voice brushed my name like a cold hand on my shoulder. "Mrs. Henderson?" I turned. A man in a tailored suit, handsome in that glossy, forgettable way, offered a practiced smile. "David Morrison," he said. "I knew your husband. I'm very sorry for your loss." The name rang like a cracked bell. Morrison Investments. The clients who had beaten Henderson Construction this past year. The shadow in Robert's last months. "Thank you," I said, studying him. "You knew Robert well?" "Business associates," he said quickly. "We met here sometimes." His eyes flicked to the bar, then back to me. He was a man of integrity. The word scraped. Yes, I said.
He was.
A pause opened between us, thin and sharp. He cleared his throat. Again, my condolences, he said, already backing toward the elevators. I should, excuse me. He disappeared into a closing door, and I stood there staring at my reflection in the brass. A useless old wife, Vanessa had said. Funny how many powerful men felt nervous around useless women. I drifted toward the side corridor with the restrooms, where the lobby noise dropped to a hush. As I passed the garden doors, I heard a voice just beyond the glass. Urgent.
Angry.
Familiar. I told you not to call me here, the man said. Yes, I saw her. Dorothy Henderson is in the lobby. The blood in my ears pounded. David. No, I don't think she knows, he said, lower now. But the timeline got screwed up when Robert died early. We were supposed to have another month. Another month. I gripped the doorframe until my fingers ached. This wasn't an affair with sloppy borders. It was a schedule. A plan with dates and deliverables, like one of Michael's bid calendars, except the project was my family. I stepped back before the door swung open, smoothed my coat, and walked to the street where the air tasted like winter steel. Across Michigan Avenue, buses hissed, and people moved like weather. I stood very still. Robert had hidden a photograph in a painting and a trail in his habits. He knew something. He'd been building toward something. And someone else had been building too. I looked up at the glittering hotel and felt the old, steady part of me settle into place. You can sip martinis over stolen loyalties, I thought, but the bill always comes. I turned toward home. Tomorrow I would open the past where it lived, inside Henderson Construction's files, inside Martha Wilson's careful memory, inside every bid Robert had locked away. Because if there was a timeline, there would be paperwork. And if there was paperwork, I would find it. The next morning, I walked into Henderson Construction with my heart pounding like I was sneaking into enemy territory. It wasn't the same building I'd known for decades. Without Robert's presence, the walls felt colder, the air sharper. Martha Wilson looked up from her desk as soon as I entered. Her face softened. Mrs. Henderson, she said warmly. It's good to see you. How are you holding up? As well as can be expected, I replied, though my voice trembled. Martha had been Robert's secretary for over 20 years. If anyone knew what had haunted him before he died, it was her. I sat down across from her desk. Martha, I need to ask you something personal. In the months before Robert passed, did he seem troubled? Her expression changed. Thoughtful, cautious. She leaned in and lowered her voice. Now that you mention it, yes. He was worried. He started working late, making calls he didn't want overheard. 2 months before he passed, he even asked me to set up a private meeting with Mr. Blackwood. He was very specific, told me not to mention it to anyone, not even Michael. I clenched my hands in my lap. Why so secretive? Martha's eyes flicked around, then back to mine. Between you and me, I think he suspected someone was feeding information to competitors. He had me pull copies of the last few bids we'd lost, big projects we should have won easily. And wouldn't you know it? Morrison Investments clients were the ones who won most of them. My stomach twisted. David Morrison, I whispered. Martha nodded grimly. Yes. Robert started keeping certain documents in his personal safe instead of the shared files. And, she hesitated then added, he asked me about Vanessa's access to Michael's computer. The words slammed into me like ice water. I gripped the armrest of the chair. He suspected her? I think he did, Martha said quietly. He never said it outright, but he was watching her. Watching everything. My mind reeled. Robert had known. He'd been building a case, piece by piece, while living under the same roof as his son's wife, the same woman who had mocked me as a useless old wife. I forced my voice steady. Thank you, Martha. You've told me exactly what I needed to know. She reached across her desk and squeezed my hand. Mr. Robert trusted you. Don't forget that. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat.
Trust.
That was Robert's final message, hidden in a painting, waiting for me to find. That afternoon, I spread everything across my dining room table like a general planning a war. The photograph. The notes I'd taken about the hotel suite. Tony's casual but damning statement. And now Martha's confirmation. Robert suspected Vanessa and David, and his suspicions had tied directly to the company's losses. The rope was tightening. But to finish the knot, I needed to confront Vanessa. Not in a screaming match, not in front of Michael, but in private, woman to woman. So she couldn't twist free. I placed the photograph into a manila envelope, along with a copy of the bid-loss records I'd obtained from the public registry. Then I picked up my phone and dialed. Vanessa? My voice was calm, almost pleasant. There was a pause on the other end before she replied. Dorothy, what a surprise. I was wondering if you could come by tomorrow afternoon, I said. There's something I'd like to discuss. Her tone sharpened slightly. Is everything all right? We'll talk tomorrow, I answered, and hung up before she could say more. I stared at the phone in my hand. Tomorrow would change everything. That night, as the rain tapped against my bedroom window, I lay awake rehearsing what I would say. The photo on the table beside me felt like it pulsed with its own heartbeat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Robert's watch glinting on the nightstand beside Vanessa, saw David's nervous glance in the hotel lobby, heard the words echo in my mind. The timeline got screwed up when Robert died early. We were supposed to have another month. Another month for what? I rolled over, staring at the painting still leaning against my wall. For the first time in weeks, I didn't see it as an insult. I saw it as a weapon. Tomorrow, Vanessa would sit in my living room, sipping tea from my porcelain cups. And I would place the photograph between us like a blade. She would learn that this useless old wife had teeth. The sky was gray that afternoon, the kind of color that made the whole world feel undecided. I set the tray carefully on the table, china cups, a porcelain teapot, lemon slices arranged just so. My hands didn't shake, though my heart did. The doorbell chimed exactly at 2 o'clock. Vanessa was punctual as ever. She stepped inside in a cream-colored suit that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread, not a family living room. She kissed the air near my cheek. Dorothy, she said with her polished smile. You sounded mysterious on the phone. I hope nothing's wrong. Please, I said, gesturing toward the sofa. Sit down. I'll bring the tea. When I returned with the tray, she was perched primly at the edge of the sofa, ankles crossed, hands folded neatly in her lap. She looked like a queen waiting to be adored. I placed the tray on the table and sat opposite her. So, she said, tilting her head, what did you want to discuss? I reached for the manila envelope. My fingers brushed its edge like a trigger. Slowly, I slid the photograph out and placed it face up on the coffee table. The change in her expression was instant. Her smile cracked, froze, then collapsed altogether. Color drained from her face. Where did you get that? She whispered, her voice barely audible. From my inheritance, I said calmly. That ugly painting turned out to be worth more than any of us realize. She stared at the photo for a long moment, then looked up at me with eyes sharp and calculating. What do you want? Her bluntness surprised me, though it shouldn't have. People like Vanessa didn't waste time with apologies. They looked for deals. What I want, I said evenly, is the truth.
About you.
About David Morrison. About Henderson Construction's missing contracts. She flinched at his name. You don't understand. I leaned forward, my voice like ice. Then help me understand. Because I have Tony's word about the hotel meetings. I have Martha's notes about Robert's suspicions. And I have this. I tapped the photograph. Tell me, Vanessa, were you feeding our company's bids to David Morrison while sharing his hotel room? Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time since I'd known her, Vanessa looked cornered. Finally, she sank back into the sofa. It wasn't supposed to go so far, she muttered. David just wanted small things. Little details to give him an edge. And then, I cut in. You helped him strip your own husband's company of millions of dollars. While sitting at my dinner table, smiling like family, her hands trembled as she twisted her wedding ring. Robert knew, she said suddenly. He found out. He confronted us about a month before he died. My chest tightened. What did he say? He told us the game was over, Vanessa whispered. That he'd tell Michael everything. That's why we met him at the hotel that day. To beg for more time. My breath caught. You were with him when he died. She nodded, tears forming. He collapsed in the bar. He was so angry, clutching his chest. We called 911, but it was too late. He was gone before the paramedics arrived. Her voice cracked, but I didn't move to comfort her. Why didn't you tell anyone? Because of how it would look, she said bitterly. Your husband's daughter-in-law and her friend being the last ones to see him alive? People would have thought we killed him. My pulse roared in my ears. She wasn't wrong about the suspicion, but the truth was still betrayal, dressed up in excuses. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. You've had years to play this game, I told her. It ends now. Her eyes widened. What are you doing? Calling Michael, I said coldly. He deserves to hear this from me, not from whispers. No, she cried, reaching across the table, but I pulled my hand back. The phone rang once, twice. Then my son's voice answered. Mom? What's wrong? You sound upset. I stared at Vanessa as I spoke. I need you to come home, Michael. There are things you need to hear about your wife. What kind of things? His voice cracked with tension. The kind, I said, my eyes never leaving Vanessa's, that explain why Henderson Construction has been losing so many bids. I ended the call and slid the phone back into my purse. Vanessa sat rigid, her face pale and her lips pressed tight. The house fell silent, except for the ticking clock on the mantel. We both knew the seconds were counting down to Michael's arrival. And when he walked through that door, everything Vanessa had built, her lies, her power, her marriage, would crumble at her feet. Michael arrived 20 minutes later, his tie crooked, his eyes searching my face the moment he walked in. Mom, he said, his voice tight. What's going on? You sounded shaken. I rose slowly from the armchair, gesturing toward the kitchen table where Vanessa sat rigid, her hands knotted in her lap. Sit down, Michael. You need to hear this. He hesitated, then lowered himself into the chair opposite her. His gaze flicked between us, confusion and dread flickering across his face. I placed the photograph on the table, sliding it across to him. He stared down at it, blinking once, twice. His hand trembled as he picked it up. Is this? His voice cracked. He looked at Vanessa. Tell me this isn't you. Her lips parted, her eyes glassy with tears. Michael, Answer me, he demanded, his voice sharper now. She swallowed hard.
Yes.
It's me, but it's not what it looks like. He let out a bitter laugh, low and hollow. Not what it looks like. You're half naked in a hotel room. How else is it supposed to look? It was years ago, she said desperately. Before we were married. I never meant. I leaned forward, my voice calm but cold. That's not all, Michael. She wasn't just unfaithful. She was feeding your company's bid information to David Morrison, selling your father's legacy piece by piece. Michael's head snapped toward me, disbelief etched on his face. What? Vanessa reached across the table, her voice pleading. It started small, Michael. Just little details. David said it was normal. Everybody shares inside information. I never thought it would. Stop, he cut her off, jerking his hand away. His voice was hoarse, shaking. For 2 years you've been betraying me? Betraying my father's company? My family? Her tears spilled then, her body folding inward. I didn't mean for it to go so far.
I swear.
David, He made me feel alive again. I was drowning in predictability, in... Michael slammed his fist on the table, making the china rattle. Predictability? That's your excuse for destroying the business my father built? For humiliating me in front of everyone who trusted us? The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel my son breaking in front of me, piece by piece, as the weight of her betrayal sank in. I reached out gently, laying a hand on his arm. "Michael," I said softly, "your father suspected. He was gathering evidence before he died. Martha confirmed it. He kept documents in his safe to protect you." Michael pressed his palms to his face, his voice muffled. "Dad knew? He tried to warn me, didn't he? And I ignored him." I shook my head firmly.
No.
"He was protecting you. He wanted you to see the truth with your own eyes, when the time was right." Vanessa's sobs filled the room, but Michael didn't look at her. When he finally lowered his hands, his face was carved with something new, steel. "Get out," he said quietly. She blinked, stunned. "Michael, please."
Get out.
His voice rose hard and final. "Pack your things and leave this house tonight. We'll handle the rest through lawyers." She stared at him in disbelief, then turned her pleading eyes toward me. "Dorothy, please, you can't let him." I met her gaze with nothing but silence. Michael stood, his chair scraping back against the tile. "I set out, Vanessa, before I lose the last shred of restraint I have left." Her sobs turned bitter as she stumbled from the room, her heels clicking down the hall. A door slammed upstairs, followed by the sound of drawers yanked open. The house shook with her chaos, but the kitchen was suddenly still. My son sat back down, his shoulders slumped, his hands covering his eyes. "I should have seen it," he whispered. "All the late nights, all the missing contracts. I trusted her." I squeezed his hand, my voice steady. "Trusting the wrong person doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. What matters is what you do now." His chest rose and fell heavily.
"What do we do now, Mom?"
"How do we come back from this?" I thought of the promissory note Robert had hidden, the insurance, the truth waiting in that deposit box. But this wasn't the moment to reveal hope. This was the moment to let the wound sting, so it wouldn't be forgotten. I met my son's weary eyes. "We rebuild," I said firmly. "Henderson Construction will rise again. And this time, no one will tear it from us." The front door slammed. Vanessa was gone. Michael exhaled, his voice low. "She'll fight this. She'll try to twist it, try to save herself." I leaned back slowly, my eyes hard. Let her try. Because deep down I already knew the war wasn't over. The real battle had only just begun. The knock came the next evening, just as Michael and I were sitting in his living room going over the contracts Vanessa had gutted. He looked up from the papers, his jaw tightening. "I'm not expecting anyone," he said. When I peered through the window, my breath caught. A silver BMW was parked crooked in the driveway, its headlights still glowing. And on the porch stood David Morrison, his perfect suit wrinkled, his hair out of place. I turned to Michael. "It's him." Michael's fists clenched. "He has the nerve." "Let him in," I interrupted. "Better we hear what he has to say while we're holding the cards." Michael opened the door with cold precision. "You have 5 minutes," he said flatly. David stepped inside, his confidence stripped away. He looked 10 years older than the man I'd seen in the hotel lobby. "Mrs. Henderson," he said quietly, "Michael, I know I have no right to be here, but I need to explain." Michael crossed his arms. "Explain what?" "How you stole millions from my company. How you used my wife to do it." David flinched.
"Yes, that."
"And more." He glanced at me, then back to Michael. "I'm done lying. My business is ruined. My wife is divorcing me. I have nothing left to lose, except maybe a sliver of my conscience." I studied him, my voice calm but sharp. "Then start with the truth. All of it." He sat down heavily, his hand shaking as he pulled a folder from his briefcase. Every contract we undercut. Every payment trail. I kept records. I thought I was protecting myself, but now maybe it can protect you. Michael snatched the folder, flipping through the papers. His voice trembled with fury. You tracked how you were gutting us? You actually cataloged it. David's shoulders sagged. I never meant for it to go so far. Vanessa, she was clever. She had access. At first it was small, bid numbers, project scopes. But then it grew. She was ambitious. Ruthless.
And I
let it happen because I wanted to win. Michael's eyes burned. You destroyed my father's company for your greed. David swallowed hard. Robert knew. The room froze. He confronted us about 2 months before he died, David continued. Said, he was done protecting you, Michael. He told us he'd give you the truth himself. We begged for time. We offered him money. He refused. I leaned forward, my voice like steel. And then, David's gaze flickered, guilt clouding his face. We met him at the hotel bar that day. He was furious. He shouted about loyalty, integrity. His chest tightened, he collapsed before we could stop it. The paramedics were called immediately. Hotel staff confirmed that. He was gone in minutes. But Vanessa panicked afterward. She thought if anyone knew we were there, it would look like we'd driven him to his grave. Michael's jaw worked as he tried to process it all. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. So my father died believing his own son was blind, believing his legacy was being stolen under my nose. I put a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. He left the truth for us to find. And we've found it. David's eyes darted between us, desperate. I'll cooperate with the authorities. I'll testify. I'll make restitution, every dollar I can. Just let me clear my conscience before it's too late. Michael stared at him, then at me. Can we even trust him? I met David's gaze, searching for cracks. His face was haggard, his eyes hollow. For the first time, I saw no arrogance there, only defeat. Maybe, I said carefully, but trust won't come from words. It'll come from what you do next. David nodded quickly. Tell me what you want. I slid a notepad across the table. Names. Numbers. Every client you stole. Every meeting with Vanessa. Write it all down. Tonight. He picked up the pen with trembling fingers. For the next hour, the only sounds were the scratch of ink and the shallow breaths of a man trying to save himself. By the end, the notepad was filled with confessions. Michael gathered the papers, his face grim. This goes to the police first thing tomorrow. David stood slowly, his eyes pleading. I know I can't undo what I've done, but maybe I can still help set it right. Michael's voice was cold. Get out of my house. David hesitated at the door, looking back at me. Mrs. Henderson, Robert was right about you. Stronger than you look. I held his gaze. Strength doesn't matter. Truth does. And you'd better pray yours is finally complete. When the door shut behind him, Michael collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I don't even know who to hate more, her or him. I rested a hand on his shoulder. Don't waste energy on hate. Save it for rebuilding. Because this isn't finished yet. Michael looked up, his eyes burning with a new resolve. What do you mean? I walked to the window, staring out at the empty driveway. The truth isn't real until the world sees it. My reflection stared back at me from the glass, steady and unbroken. They've hidden their lies in hotel rooms and shadows, I whispered. But we'll drag them into the light. Publicly. And for the first time since Robert's funeral, I felt the sharp edge of purpose cut through the grief. Tomorrow, the world would know what Vanessa and David had done. The day of the press conference arrived colder than I expected. The lobby of Henderson Construction, once filled with whispers and shame, now buzzed with cameras, reporters, and the low hum of microphones being tested. For weeks, I had carried the photograph, the files, and Robert's hidden truths like weapons in my purse. Today, I would finally use them. Detective Rodriguez stood at the podium first, professional and firm. After a thorough investigation, she announced, Vanessa Henderson and David Morrison face charges of corporate conspiracy, theft, and fraud. Evidence shows Henderson Construction was deliberately sabotaged from within. The words echoed through the room. I stood near the side, Michael at my shoulder, his jaw set like stone. Vanessa was there too, flanked by her lawyer. Her face was pale, her perfect hair no longer armor, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. A reporter raised his hand. Who uncovered the evidence? Detective Rodriguez gestured toward me. Mrs. Dorothy Henderson, widow of Robert Henderson, provided crucial documents and testimony. Without her persistence, this case might never have come to light. For a moment, every eye in the room turned toward me. The cameras clicked. My knees wanted to buckle, but I stood taller, smoothing my jacket. I heard Vanessa's hiss behind me. You've ruined me, she whispered, her voice shaking. I turned, my voice steady and low.
No, Vanessa.
You ruined yourself. I just held up the mirror. Reporters leaned forward as I stepped to the podium. The microphone was cold against my fingers. I cleared my throat, searching for words that would honor Robert, that would cut through the noise without drowning in anger. You can steal contracts, I began, my voice echoing across the marble walls, and you can steal trust. But you cannot steal a family's backbone. Robert Henderson built this company on loyalty, on hard work, on integrity. And while Betrayal tried to tear it down, it will rise again, stronger, cleaner, and honest. A ripple of applause moved through the room. Cameras flashed. Vanessa's face collapsed into a mask of fury and fear. David sat slumped at the back, defeated, a man already buried by his own choices. Michael stepped forward then, placing a hand on my shoulder.
His voice was firm.
From this day forward, Henderson Construction will rebuild with the values my father lived by. We will honor his name by doing business the right way. The conference ended in a blur of questions and flashing lights. Vanessa was escorted out with her lawyer at her side, her chin trembling as she tried to hold on to dignity that no longer belonged to her. David walked silently, head bowed, his cooperation buying him pity, but no respect. When the crowd dispersed, Michael and I sat in his office, the same room Robert had ruled for 30 years. The silence felt different now. Not heavy with secrets, but lighter, like the air after a storm. Michael turned to me, his eyes tired but clearer than I'd seen in months. Mom, he said quietly, thank you for fighting when I couldn't see what was in front of me. I reached for his hand. Your father trusted me to finish what he started. Now, it's your turn to carry it forward. He squeezed my hand, a man finally stepping into his role. Partners? He asked. I smiled. Partners. Weeks later, the dust began to settle. Henderson Construction was steadying itself, contracts returning, reputation slowly repairing. The promissory note Robert left gave us the capital we needed, and for the first time, my name sat beside my son's on the official paperwork. And in my office, right behind my desk, hangs the painting, Sunset over Lake Michigan. Ugly, clumsy, and heavier than it looks. People ask why I keep it. I just smile and say, because sometimes the ugliest things hide the greatest truths. When I sit alone in that room, I look at the brushstrokes and remember Robert. He wasn't perfect. He made mistakes. But in the end, he trusted me to finish his fight. And I did. As for Vanessa, she's learning a lesson I wish she'd learned long ago. Actions have consequences, and orange prison jumpsuits don't pair well with expensive heels. David will spend years untangling the mess he made. And me? I've stopped being a useless old wife. I've become something far better. Proof that strength doesn't fade with age, that betrayal can be answered with dignity, and that revenge doesn't always come from rage. Sometimes the best revenge is rebuilding stronger than before. I looked at the phone on my desk, the company line ringing again. Another client. Another chance. I smiled as I reached for it. Henderson Construction, I said. How can we help you? Because this story, my story, wasn't about endings. It was about beginnings. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.